5 Americans imprisoned by Iran for years and freed in a highly controversial deal are finally on their way home. In that prisoner exchange, the U.S. agreed to release nearly $6 billion in frozen Iranian assets owed by a third country, South Korea. Well, to talk more about this exchange now, I'm joined by our international affairs editor, Kethevane Gorjestani. Kethevane, this deal is not without controversy. What kind of reactions have there been so far from the U.S.?
Well, as you can expect, there was a big backlash coming, of course, from the Republicans to this deal made by the Biden administration. Intense criticism from the Republicans, mostly focused on the fact that they believe that this is simply a ransom payment to the Iranians and that this is likely going to invite Iranian officials to keep arresting those dual citizens and using them as a bargaining chip. And one of the people who really summed up the criticism of the Republican Party is Mike McCall. He's the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House. And he said, I'm very concerned that the $6 billion hostage deal incentivizes future hostage taking. There is no question this deal will free up funds for Iran's malign activities. So you're also seeing their criticism of the defense by the Biden administration saying, well, they're not going to be able to use this money for anything. It will be focused on humanitarian goods. They're saying, well, they might use this $6 billion on humanitarian goods. That frees up all the rest of the money to use it on whatever they like. There's also criticism from Iranian activists as a whole around the world and in the U.S. Saying that, yes, it does incentivize for future hostage taking or prisoner taking, but also they don't like the timing of this deal coming just a few days after the one-year anniversary of Mahsa Amini's death.
In the meantime, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has promised to keep pressing Iran for accountability. Here's what he had to say.
Throughout the work we've done to bring so many other Americans home, President Biden has demonstrated that he's prepared to make tough and difficult decisions. We continue to be determined to take whatever step is necessary to deal with actions by Iran in a whole host of areas that are profoundly objectionable.
So, Kethevane, what do you think going forward? Is this likely to help ease tensions between the U.S. and Iran?
Well, it does look like a rare moment of cooperation between the U.S. and Iran, but it's likely not going to lead to necessarily any real progress when it comes to this difficult relationship between the two countries. And the Iranian president, Ibrahim Raisi himself, he talked about the fact that this could build a little bit more trust, but he also added in that same event that there was a lack of trust when it comes to the United States because, quote, the United States has trampled upon commitments and broken promises repeatedly. Same tough words coming from the Americans, a senior administration official, saying that this deal does not change our relationship with Iran. Iran is an adversary, a state sponsor of terrorism, and we will hold them accountable wherever possible. And they have done just that pretty much at the same time that the swap was happening. The Americans announcing fresh new sanctions on Iran and Iranians, Iran's intelligence ministry, as well as the former president of Iran, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. These sanctions were for their involvement in wrongful detentions and other human rights abuse. So yes, this deal is a big step. It's a big deal. It does remove some sort of obstacle when it comes to the relationship between these two countries, but there's still a lot of issues where they definitely do not agree, and that is an understatement. There are, of course, all these U.S. sanctions on Iran. There's Iran's support for militias in the region. There's U.S. military presence in the Gulf that irritates the Iranians. And, of course, there is the big elephant in the room, the Iran nuclear deal that is not going anywhere, at least for the time being.
All right, Kethevane, thanks for that. France 24's Kethevane Gorjestani.